Dean Opperman here. Today I'd like to take you on an imaginary journey. Now suppose it's many years ago and you're peeking through the window of a darkened radio studio. See that young man sitting in front of a microphone? That's me at my first professional broadcasting job at a small radio station in San Luis Obispo, California, KVEC. My boss was an old-school announcer with big pipes named Daryl Cruz. He didn't like me very much because I'd gotten off on the proverbial wrong foot from the get-go. It started with my first night on the air when I managed to screw up the mandatory hourly station identification. If you didn't say it exactly as specified by the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, D.C., stations could be, and often were, fined thousands of dollars. So it was the one thing you had to get right, and of course, I didn't. Instead of saying, "This is KVEC San Luis Obispo," I managed to say, "This is KVEC San Luis Abysmal," something my goofy roommate had come up with that stuck in my head like shrapnel. As far as I knew, no one noticed my blunder until Daryl called me into his office to read a letter from the Chamber of Commerce.
It says here they're taking great umbrage at Dean Opperman for denigrating our fine city.
I didn't know what umbrage meant, but I knew it wasn't good. Days later, I was back in Daryl's hot seat.
Dean,
He pronounced my name as if it had 2 syllables.
Dean, please tell whoever it is to stop sending fan mail. I've got a half-dozen postcards raving about your show, which is odd since they're all postmarked before you even went on the air here.
I'm pretty sure this was my mother's doing, bless her heart. She was so proud I was on the radio. She was even happier I'd found a job. Now, instead of laying low like anyone with a brain, I had a brilliant idea. I'd get on Daryl's good side by showing up at dawn the next day to help with KVEC's big morning news block. I went to Penny's and bought a long-sleeve white shirt and a clip-on tie. I brought donuts and poured coffee and answered phones, and everything seemed to be going well. Our news anchor, Dick Fitzmaurice, had just started reading the primetime 7 a.m. newscast when I noticed the water cooler was getting low. I was hoisting one of those giant Mountain Spring water bottles to the top of the cooler, they were glass in those days, when it suddenly slipped from my grip and crashed to the floor like a cut crystal version of the Hindenburg. The ensuing tsunami raced across the hall and directly into the main control room, flooding a rat's nest of high-voltage wires and causing Dick to leap like a gazelle out of fear of imminent electrocution. Suddenly, there stood Daryl, no doubt wondering what I was doing up to my wingtips in water, struggling to swab the studio shag with a fossilized string mop. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I sensed immediately I was as close to the unemployment line as was humanly possible without actually filing for benefits. This time, I did lie low until the following Saturday night and my once-a-week air shift. But instead of doing my usual record show, I'd be preempted by the first game of the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball season. And since the Dodgers accounted for fully 50% of KVEC's annual revenue, I had to make damn sure the game aired without incident. It was sink or swim, and I don't mean in bottled water either. Engineering a Dodger game was a multitasker's minefield. First, I had to learn how to back time, which meant I had to calculate to the second exactly what to say and what to play before the Dodger feed came down the network line at precisely 7 p.m. I also had to keep one eye on a menacing studio clock with ominous Art Deco numerals and a blood-red second hand that lorded over me like the sword of Damocles. I also had to wear a pair of rickety headphones that had been duct taped in such a way that you could hear what was on the air in the left channel while monitoring the Dodger network in the right, which more or less arrived at KVEC via 4,000-mile Thomas Edison vintage grade F telephone wire direct from Greater Caracas, Venezuela. In those pre-satellite days, it's a miracle we heard anything at all. 6:55, exactly 5 minutes before game time. I was running a commercial for Gus's Groceries, which required me to read a live tag from a massive steel binder, which was attached to the console with a half-dozen high-test magnesium flange bolts and was so overbuilt it was rumored to have seen defensive action on Omaha Beach. Where's the Gus's tag? It should be filed under G. Where is it? Oh, there it is.
Gus's Grocery, a small neighborhood store, the kind that's handy to have around.
And don't forget Gus's special this week, fresh-cut butcher case bologna, only 43 cents a pound. Join Wayne Shaw for a recap of today's Cal Poly versus Reno wrestling match at 11:05 tonight, following ABC News right here. Taking us up to Dodger baseball at the top of the hour, here's TSOP by MFSB on KVEC. Now, I knew Daryl wasn't going to like my alphabet soup talk-up, much less the music, since KVEC probably hadn't played a black artist since the Ink Spots, but it was in a box of records in my car, which I'd used at my DJ gig the night before, and I figured I was on safe ground because at that time this record was everywhere. It was the theme to Soul Train, Monday Night Football, Farrah Fawcett shampoo, and an ongoing promotional campaign for ABC TV featuring the ubiquitous voice of Eddie Anderson. You remember Eddie Anderson?
On the Love Boat.
That Eddie Anderson. Okay, 70 seconds till the Dodger game at 7. Time to monitor the network for the countdown tones. I'm supposed to hear the first one at 60 seconds to air, but I don't hear anything. Hello? Ow, that was loud enough to dissolve my kidney stones. Okay, 60 seconds to game time. Oh, God, it's the phone. I won't answer it. No, it might be Daryl. Hello, KVEC. Calm down, ma'am. I don't understand what you're saying. Your what? Your cat ran away? Let me get a pencil here, okay? Go ahead. It's white with a black ear. Oh, I'm sorry. It's black with a white ear. Its name is Muffy. Well, I don't need its name. Okay, can you call me back in a half hour? Yes, I'll play some Engelbert Humperdinck after the Dodgers. Uh-huh. Bye-bye. These people. Okay, there should be another tone at 10 seconds to air. There it is. Stay tuned for the Dodgers live from Venezuela next on KVEC San Luis Obispo.
Let's go, batter up. We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a ball game.
Dodger Baseball is on the air. Brought to you by your Union 76 dealers. Drive in where you see the big orange ball. Get the spirit of 76.
Now, supposedly I could relax at this point because the Dodger pregame show ran 15 minutes, and all I had to do was play the Union 76 commercials when Vin Scully cued me. And this is where it gets interesting. The pregame show contained exactly 3 Union 76 gasoline commercials. No more, no less. And when Vinny called for the Union 76 spot, you ran it and nothing else. If you somehow ran a different commercial or a fourth commercial, it meant nullification of the Dodger contract, which was a fate worse than death. Now, normally, Vinny's sidekick, Jerry Doggett, hosted the pregame show, but for some reason, Vinny was doing it, which was strange, but no cause for alarm. Yet. At least Vinny didn't mention it. What he did talk about was a sudden rain squall that was flooding the infield. Then he said he had to close the window to the announce booth so he didn't get wet. And here came commercial number 1.
Go with the spirit of 76.
When Vinny returned, he talked about the Caracas Lions, who were kind of a South American Dodger farm club in those days. They supplied some notable Dodgers over the years, including manager Tommy Lasorda. But that came later. And here came the second commercial.
Look up to 76.
When Vinny returned this time, he said that the rain was so heavy the stadium crew were unfurling tarps to protect the infield. You could actually hear the rain pounding on the roof of Vinny's booth. But Scully, cool as always, said, "Folks, the Dodger bus still hasn't arrived here at the stadium. Normally during road games, I get off the Dodger plane and me and the broadcast crew take a taxi to the stadium to get set up. The team follows about a half hour later in a chartered bus, but for some reason, the bus is nowhere in sight. So while I try to get some answers, we'll pause for this message."
Spirit of 76.
Now, since this was the final Union 76 spot, I had no idea what Scully would do when it ended, and I don't imagine he did either. When he returned, he said he'd called the Caracas airport, who told him the Dodger bus had left for the stadium a half hour earlier. Now, since the Dodgers were missing, there was nothing to do except wait to see if the Caracas team declared a rainout. But since everybody knew by now that the Dodgers were somewhere on the road from the airport, there was no way to do that. So, for the next hour and a half, without notes, without preparation, without commercials, without a sidekick, without even a game to call, Vin Scully ad-libbed an avalanche of anecdotes from his vast mental database of Dodger lore. He spoke of the decades of struggle in tiny Ebbets Field and the fierce crosstown rivalry with the New York Yankees as the two teams faced each other in 5 World Series before the Dodgers finally won their first title in 1955. He talked about Jackie Robinson facing a barrage of racial abuse after breaking the major league color barrier. And he talked about his earliest days at the mic, interning under fabled Dodger announcer Red Barber, whose homespun sayings like, "That kid is sitting in the catbird seat," didn't make any sense, but everybody knew what he meant anyway. When Vinny replaced Barber in 1950, he tried to mimic Barber's style, but Red's advice was not to copy him or would water down his wine. Another way of saying he should create his own style, which Vin Scully did in spades. Vinny told stories of the Dodgers moving west and playing in the LA Coliseum, a stadium built for the 1932 Olympics but ill-suited for baseball, and how the Dodgers won the World Series playing there anyway. He told wonderful stories of Dodger legends like Leo DeRocher, Pee Wee Reese, Duke Snider, and Don Drysdale. And he recalled the first time he saw Sandy Koufax, who he was sure wouldn't amount to much because he looked more like a sun-starved pharmacist than somebody ready for the bigs. And with honest remorse, he recalled eating crow when Koufax pitched a perfect game to win the World Series for the Dodgers in 1965. Vinny's masterful monologue brought us right up to the present day, which, as if by providence, just so happened to coincide with the arrival of the Dodger bus, which it turned out had been blocked by a massive mudslide until the Caracas version of Caltrans managed to clear the road. Now the skies parted, the sun broke through, the tarps were rolled up, and Vinny bellowed his famous refrain,
"It's time for Dodger baseball."
Vin Scully's marathon of memories was mesmerizing. Sitting in that darkened studio, listening to him reminisce from 4,000 miles away, was as if the two of us were having a beer someplace while he spoke only to me. And that became the most important lesson I ever got about broadcasting. Vinny showed me that when you're on the air, you're not talking to millions of faceless listeners, you're talking to just one person at a time. Putting it into practice gave me a new sense of confidence. My mic fright began to disappear. I was less prone to screw-ups. And I began to believe my hopes for a career in broadcasting was attainable. No tapes of Vinny's Venezuela broadcast exist. I've looked. Meanwhile, I want to leave those of you who never got to hear Vin Scully an example of his amazing ability to ad-lib. And I think I found it. The date is May 30th, 1959. The Dodgers and the Giants at Los Angeles Coliseum in their first important matchup of the season. It's the top of the sixth. Don Drysdale is on the mound for the Dodgers, Willie Mays at bat for the Giants. Listen now as Vin Scully paints a radio word picture, every bit as vivid as seeing it unfold on a big screen.
Drysdale ready, and the 1-1 pitch. Curveball cut on is a high fly ball right down the left field line. Right on the line, hits the foul pole and kicks foul. That's just about as foul as you can get without being fair. Willie Mays hit the foul pole, and it kicked off in foul ground. Rigney is telling Mays to trot all the way around. Solly Parker and Bill Rigney appealing to third base umpire Dusty Bodges. And now they're going to wave Mays around, and here come the Dodgers after Bodges. If you know the Coliseum at all, and you know the girder that supports the screen right down the left field line, Willie Mays hit a fly ball that actually hit that girder and then kicked off into foul territory. At first, Dusty Bodges called it foul. But Rigney told Mays to go around anyway, and after Rigney and Solly Parker got into the discussion, Bodges suddenly ruled home run. The Dodgers came racing out of the dugout. A firecracker goes off back of home plate like to scare everybody out of 10 years' growth, and the argument continues directly back of third base along the line. All four umpires, along with a heated group of Dodgers. And the rhubarb continues about 30 feet down the line. So Willie Mays, who is normally causing a lot of noise either at the Coliseum or Seal Stadium, has now really set off a bomb here at the Coliseum. When you look at that girder down the left field line, there are many cables and wires that make it a very tough spot to look at. No doubt the Dodger contention is that the ball hit one of the wires to make it foul. But Bodges is now sticking to his guns. Drysdale is so mad he almost kicked 20 feet of the Coliseum out of the park. Gil Hodges right now is jaw to jaw with Dusty Bodges. Gil pointing first with his left hand, then with his right hand. Drysdale appealing to the gods right now. He just wants to holler at anybody who'll listen. Don Zimmer is arguing with Tommy Gorman. The other three umpires now leave Bodges alone, and he is in the midst of lions. Don Zimmer, Don Drysdale, Walter Alston, Gil Hodges, and Wally Moon are blistering Bodges, and Dusty every now and then seems to punctuate a Dodger sentence by pointing with his left hand to that left field foul pole. At the very top of the foul pole, there are two slanting guide wires. One goes from the top of the pole to the right down to the screen, and the other one goes from the top to the left down to toward the stands. The Dodger contention is that the ball hit the guide wire going to the left and would be fouled. Alston and Hodges and Zimmer and Moon continue to appeal. Gorman now tells Hodges to walk away, but Hodges goes right after Gorman. Zimmer will be hoarse in another 2 minutes. The veins on each side of his neck bulging out like the cable that actually holds up the left field screen. Bodges sticking to his guns. The Dodgers continue to appeal, but Mays has touched all the bases and will come in with a home run. Gorman, who is the captain of this umpiring quartet, has now summoned Bill Rigney out of the giant dugout, and both Gorman and Salty Parker are flanking Bill Rigney, and of course Gorman doing all the talking. Meanwhile, the Dodgers are still around Bodges at third, but watching Rigney's reaction, it looks like Gorman is going to call it foul, and Rigney is about ready to eat his glasses. Alston has walked away like a Philadelphia lawyer who has just won his case. Rigney slams his hat down and the gray hairs glistening under the lights. Bill is now going jaw to jaw with Bodges. Now he kicks at the dirt. Hands on his hips, left hand thrown high in the air. Ed Sudol comes in to quiet the giant manager down. Rigney's left hand, then his right hand up in the air. Now his hat is back on. So first the Dodgers appeal and walk away, and now it's Rigney's turn to be on the griddle. All four umpires appear to be trying to placate Rigney. Presenting their case, the giant manager now starting to walk around, slamming his hands together, pointing with the right hand, then with the left. Now a big sweeping gesture with the left hand. Gorman comes after him now as if Rigney must have touched a nerve, and Gorman goes chewing right back after the giant manager. Rigney now goes after Gorman, points with his left hand to that girder. Gorman answers with a right-handed gesture. Rigney bows at the waist with a sweeping right hand. And Gorman and Rigney are really going at it. Bodges comes over, and Rigney, like a mad traffic cop now, with a right hand, indicating that all the umpires are mad. Rigney kicks at the dirt, walks away with a hopeless gesture of both hands. Willie Mays comes out. Rigney drapes his left arm around Mays' shoulder and tells him to go to second base. I'll meet you halfway, and what a riot. First it was ruled foul. Then it was ruled fair. Then the Dodgers won half a case and got Mays to go to second base. As soon as we get the ground rules on this particular play off the back of a batting card, we can pass them along. Willie Mays hits the loudest double ever heard in Southern California, or in the United States for that matter. Rigney now comes to argue with the plate umpire, Ed Sudol. Sudol pointing with his right hand towards the screen, Rigney pointing with his right hand, let's say, towards the Dodger dugout. Now Salty Parker comes down, and it's Rigney with his head just jerking a mile a minute, and now Sudol wants to talk to third base umpire Dusty Bodges. It's a fight, a blow-by-blow verbal battle. Rigney has Bodges on his left and Sudol on his right. And right now, Rigney is laying down the law, and the umpires come right back with words and gestures. Salty Parker, third base coach, with his arms folded across his chest, just listening right now. Rigney is concentrating his verbal fire on third base umpire Dusty Bodges. Sudol is now trying to draw some of the wrath of the Giant manager, but Bill wants to stay with Bodges. Rigney now whirls, and since Sudol is walking towards the plate, Bill starts to go after him, then turns and goes back after Bodges. Willie Mays, the cause of it all, at least he hit the ball, standing quietly at second base. Tommy Gorman and Ed Sudol have a meeting halfway between home plate and first base. Bodges has his hands full with both Rigney and Salty Parker. We will have to wait to get the actual and official clarification. Walter Alston has come out of the Dodger dugout, and in the runway leading back towards the tunnel, he is now talking to Buzzy Bavasi, the Dodgers vice president. Rigney is exploding at Bodges, so Gorman and Sudol are coming over again, trying to bail out Dusty. Gorman talking to Rigney. Rigney turns and starts to walk away, gives a big gesture with his hands, and Gorman comes back with the same gesture. Now, plate umpire Ed Sudol has hollered up to the press box that the Giants will play the ball game under protest, and it must be announced to the crowd. Listen, here comes the announcement.
Manager Bill Rigney is playing a game under protest.
The great Vin Scully, who over the course of a 67-year career called an amazing 9,000 games, and he never called it in. I'm Dean Opperman.